In Sky FF, scoring 20 points was something of a rarity. In Cloud Fantasy Football, 3 players managed it in a single game week this weekend. Who were they? Let's take a look. Let's see how it affected the leaderboard. Let's get into it. Hello everybody, welcome to Midweek Matchups from the Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show. Let's see how we got on in Game Week 2. You can see my team up there. Dean Henderson in goal, 1 point. Kwanzaa didn't play, so 0 points. Saliba, 13. Romero, 44. Unexpected captaincy hero of the day. He was only an assist away from a full house. He scored a goal, passing bonus, shots bonus, tackle bonus. 44 points in all, well done there. And Gvardiol, 6-pointer, is in passing bonus and 1 tackle, I think. In midfield, the ever disappointing again, McAllister and Rice, 2 points each. And Bruno Guimaraes, he was my captain on Sunday with 12, so 6 doubled. Up front, Haaland with his hat-trick, 20 points. Muniz, 4, and Isak, 3. Again, both disappointing now. So it looks like there's issues with the team. It's currently ranked 270th, so an improvement from last week, but not by much. Kwanzaa looks like he's got to go. McAllister and Rice aren't cutting much mustard. Isak and Muniz, not really either. And nor's Henderson, apart from the fact he's cheap. But we've got one more game week this weekend to go before the international break. So I might make a change or two, we shall see. Rice definitely looks like a mistake. Saka was by far the better Arsenal pick. McAllister hasn't been getting any tier points at all under Arne Slot. And Kwanzaa is obviously now third choice centre half. Konate played quite well. Henderson, Palace haven't been great at the back. They've moved on a defender. One more still might go. He's still cheap and he's still playing, so we shall see there. What I'll probably end up doing is getting a sort of a mini overhaul together, making a few changes either this coming week or the next couple of weeks after the international break to get my team up to what I think is probably a better potential key 11, shall we say. Optimal is the word I think the kids use these days. So let's see how that looks in comparison to the overall league. Click on here. So Duncan Bailey still at the top, 286 points, 40 clear. My team, let's just type in here, Parin. So you can see there, 183 points overall, 107 for this week, and 270th. I'll get rid of that. And if you actually click on this arrow on the right-hand side, you'll get the game week totals. So click it once and it goes from lowest to highest. So the lowest game week total this week was 20 and the highest 161, which is pretty good going. And you can see there first and second overall had the third and fourth highest game week scores. So well done. Some people have obviously got it right. It's up to the rest of us, me included, to catch up. So let's have a look at the match centres then, see how these points were scored over the week. And I only saw really 2 games this weekend because we were away. I had good fortune to be away up in Sherwood Forest. So I did see the Villa v Arsenal game on Saturday afternoon and the Liverpool v Brentford game on Sunday afternoon. I've not seen any others. So let's have a look. Click this onto game week 2. So the first game was Brighton against Manchester United. Brighton 2, Manchester United 1. We had goals from Porro and Welbeck. Pedro and Welbeck, and assisted by Matoma and Adingra. And for United, Diallo scored, assisted by Mazraoui. And in tiers, so tackle tiers for Brighton, we had Gilmore and Veltman tier 1 and Van Heck tier 2. In the passing tiers, Dunk tier 2 and Van Heck tier 3. And shot tiers, Milner tier 1, Pedro tier 2 and Welbeck tier 2. For Manchester United, Casemiro in the tackles with a tier 3. Martinez was the only one in the passes. He got tier 2 with 70. In the shots, Casemiro, Mount, Diallo and Garnacho. Van Heck, 2.8 I think. He's looking like an ideal replacement for Kwanzaa in my team. They visit Arsenal on the weekend. Probably not going to keep a clean sheet, but there's definitely a fair chance of tears there. So I'll have a look on the planner this week and see how that fits in with where I want the rest of the team to look. But Van Heck looks to be good value at that price. So then we move on to the 3 o'clock games. Crystal Palace 0, West Ham 2. Goals from Souček and Bowen. And in the tiers, Riyadh had a tier 3 tackles for Palace, tier 1 for Mitchell, Wharton and Munoz. In the passes, Wharton again tier 1 with Riyadh and Guehi tier 2. And in the shots, Eze and Edouard tier 1. For West Ham, in the tackles, Souček tier 1, Emerson tier 2 and Paquetá tier 3. In the passes, only Kilman tier 1, and in the shots, Souček, Bowen and Füllkrug all on tier 1. So then we move on to Fulham v Leicester. Fulham 2, Leicester 1. Goals from Smith Rowe and Iwobi, assists from Robinson and Traore, and for Leicester, Wout Faes with the goal, assisted by Buenote. Now in the tiers for Fulham, Tete tier 2 tackles and Robinson tier 3. In the passes, Lukic tier 1 and Bassi tier 2. Leno with the saves, tier 1. And in the shots, Smith Rowe and Traore tier 1 and Iwobi and Muniz tier 2. And for Leicester, tackles, Justin, Christensen and then Ndidi and Buenote tier 1. Fatawu tier 3. In the passes, Faes and Vestergaard and Winks all tier 1. Hermansen had tier 2 saves, and in the shots, Faes, Ndidi, Fatawu and Decordova-Reid all tier 1. So of all of the starting 11 there, only Jamie Vardy didn't pick up anything. Manchester City 4, Ipswich 1. Ipswich seemed like they annoyed Manchester City by taking the lead through Smodics, assisted by Johnson, and then City, Haaland hat-trick, and the other goal from De Bruyne, and assist for De Bruyne and Savinho. In the tiers, Gvardiol tier 1 tackles and Savinho tier 2. In the passes, Gvardiol, Diaz, Akanji and De Bruyne all on tier 3 with Lewis on tier 1. And in the shots, Haaland tier 3, 4 shots on target, and De Bruyne tier 1. For Ipswich, tackles tier 1 for Johnson, tier 3 for Morsey. That's the second week on the trot for Morsey. And in the shots, just 1 shot on target, which was Smodics for the goal. Through Southampton against Nottingham Forest, Southampton 0, Nottingham Forest 1. Goal for Morgan Gibbs-White. Looks like it was unassisted. And in the tiers, Saves, McCarthy, 7 saves for a tier 3. In the tackles, tier 1 for Stevens, Walker-Peters and Sugawara, tier 2 for Downs. In the passes, tier 1 for Walker-Peters, tier 3 for Stevens, Bednarek and Harwood-Bellis. Harwood-Bellis, that's twice he's been in the passes. Both times Southampton have lost. He still managed to get in the passes and he's very cheap. 2.3, I think. And shots, just 1 shot on target for Walker-Peters, so tier 1. For Nottingham Forest, in the tackles, Sangare and Gibbs-White, tier 1 each, and Anderson, tier 2. Nobody in the passes. Oh, sorry, I've missed a tackle there. Dominguez was a tier 1, and he only came off the bench in the 75th minute with 3 tackles in the last sort of 20 minutes or so. And in the shots, so Williams, Sangare, Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, all 1 shot each for tier 1, and Gibbs-White and Wood, tier 2. Spurs against Everton. Spurs for Everton 0. Goals for Basuma, 2 for Heung-min Song and 1 for Romero. Assists for Van der Ven, Madison, Kulusevski. In the tiers, in the tackles, Porro tier 1 and Odobert tier 1, Romero tier 3. In the passes, we've got 2 in tier 2, which is Van der Ven and Basuma, and Romero in tier 3. And in the shots, Madison and Basuma tier 1 each, Romero tier 2, and Son tier 3. For Everton, in the tackles, Dixon and Guehi, tier 3 each, Undai again off the bench but tier 2, Pickford with tier 1 saves, and Lindstrom with tier 1 shots. Nobody in the passes at all. Then we come to the evening game, Saturday evening, Aston Villa against Arsenal. Aston Villa 0, Arsenal 2. So goals for Partey and Trossard, with an assist for Saka. In the tiers, tackles, tier 2 for Digne, tier 3 for Tielemans and Nedeljkovic. If he plays regularly, another one, I'm going to need to do some reading up on how to pronounce his name. Nobody in the passes. For the shots, Bailey, Watkins and Ramsey all on tier 1. Watkins missed a couple of sitters, one a real bad wide miss and one a great save from Raya. Fixtures come for Aston Villa though, so he's definitely going to be on people's watch list. And for Arsenal, in the tackles, Saka tier 1, Saliba tier 3. Passes, White tier 1, Gabriel and Saliba tier 3. Raya with tier 1 saves with 3. And then in the shots, got Rice, Partey, Saka and Trossard all with 1 shot each. Bournemouth against Newcastle. Bournemouth 1, Newcastle 1. Goals from Gordon, assisted by Barnes off the bench, and Semenyo assisting for Tavernier. In the tiers, Neto with tier 2 saves. In the tackles, Senesi and Tavernier tier 1 and Cook tier 3. Nobody in the passes for Bournemouth. In the shots, Tavernier and Sinistera with tier 1 and Ivanilson, who played 72 minutes on his debut, tier 2, 2 shots. For Newcastle, Pope, tier 1 saves with 3. In the tackles, Bruno G, tier 2 and Joe Linton, tier 3. In the passes, Dan Burn and Bruno G, tier 1. And shots, Dan Burn, Joe Linton, Bruno G, Gordon and Isak, all tier 1. Wolves against Chelsea. Wolves 2, Chelsea 6. So much for my prediction that Chelsea are in trouble and Wolves have beat them 1-0. Hey. So goals for Wolves from Cunha and Strand Larsen, assisted by Aït-Nouri and Gomez. Toti Gomez, I think. And for Chelsea, goals for Jackson, Palmer and João Felix, with a hat-trick from Madueke. Assists from 3 for Palmer, 1 for Jackson, 1 for Neto. And in the tiers, so tackles for Wolves, tier 2 for Doherty, tier 3 for Gomez, that's João Gomez. Shots, Strand Larsen and Sarabia with tier 1 and Cunha with tier 2. For Chelsea, tackles Gusto and Fernandez both tier 2. Colwill, the only one in passing, was 71, so tier 2. And shots, Palmer, Jackson and Felix all with tier 1 and Madueke tier 3. And then Liverpool against Brentford was the Super Sunday 4:30. Liverpool 2, Brentford 0. Goals from Luis Diaz and Mo Salah. Assists for Jota and Luis Diaz. In the tier points for Liverpool, Gravenberch and Diaz both with tier 1 tackles. In the passes, tier 1 for Robertson and Van Dijk and Szoboszlai, tier 2 for Gravenberch and Konate. And in the shots, tier 1 for Van Dijk and Konate, tier 2 for Robertson, Diaz and Salah. For Brentford, Flecken with the 6 saves for tier 3, 3 points. In the tackles, Norgard, an old Sky favourite, with tier 2. And in the shots, Collins and Lewis Potter, 1 shot each. Moving on to see who's scoring all the points then. Top of the shop, Erling Haaland, 28 points in 2 weeks. Christian Romero just 1 point shy of him on 27. Then we've got Salah and Saliba, 22. Raya, Saka, Welbeck, Palmer and Madueke up to 20. Van Dijk on 19. Becker, Alisson Becker and Pedro Porro on 18. Then we've got Son, Mitoma, De Bruyne, Van der Ven and Robertson on 17. And then Van Heck, Gabriel and Ben White on 16. So none of those what you consider a bad player. You'd be pleasantly surprised to own Welbeck or Madueke, I imagine. They're reasonably cheap. Everybody else is what would traditionally be considered a decent Sky asset, so probably a good cloud asset as well, to be fair. We could break this down a bit by position. We'll have a look in goalkeepers. So Raya and Alisson at the top. You get what you pay for with the money by the looks of it. So they're 4.3 and 4.5. Nick Pope next at 4 million. Edison at 4.6. Then we're into the cheaper people, or a few anyway. So Matt Sells 3.2. Jason Steele 2.9. Anybody that's thinking of Steele, Verbruggen's back playing in the Carabao Cup this week for Brighton. Vicario and Anana, Areola. No surprise to see that the keeper that I have, Dean Henderson, right down the bottom of the list there, only 3 points over 2 games. So we move on to defenders. So Romero at the top, and then sort of a who's who really. You've got Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham. Van Heck breaking into the top 10. Then you've got Manchester City duo of Gvardiol and Akanji. Kilman of Wolves. Oh, sorry, it's Kilman of West Ham now, of course. Diaz again there for Manchester City. Anthony Robinson is getting good reviews for Fulham. Decent bonus points there as well by the looks of things. Lewis Dunk, an old favourite, down there on 12 points. Konate, he's only played a game and a half. just under 4 million, already up to 11. Is he worth 1.2 less than Van Dijk? Well, time will tell if he plays all the games, I guess. On to midfield. Bukayo Saka and Cole Palmer, and two 5.8 million assets, but top of the shop there, 20 points each. Matoma's been going well for Brighton. Kevin De Bruyne, always a good player. Whether he's consistently going to get picked when we get into autumn and the Champions League is back is a different question. Kovacic still hanging on from his last week's haul. Only 2 points this week then. Iwobi and Joe Linton, two 3.5 million assets. They've both scored, so that probably gets them up the table. Gibbs White again with a goal. Paquetá scored last week. Tavernier and Partey and Bissouma. Smith Rowe, very popular Smith Rowe. They've all scored. Souček scored. Bruno hasn't scored, but he looks like he's top of the list there for bonus points. We'll look at the forwards, or strikers. Haaland and Salah, both at the top, no surprise. Madueke, another one of those that's a forward in the TFF game, so it's a forward in our cloud game. Welbeck, as previously mentioned. Son and Diaz and Semenyo are all forwards in this. They would have been midfielders last time around in Sky. Jackson got his goal. Fatawu for Leicester, I think that's a couple of assists, and he's heavier on bonus as well with 7. Havertz and Jota, they both scored and assisted, I think. Wissa, a cheap option for Brentford. Be interesting to see if Tony moves before the window closes. If he does, then Wissa might be a good option. Decent home fixtures coming up in the near future. Then after about 6 game weeks more or so, they end up with a good run of fixtures, Brentford. But the minute they've got a difficult stretch of away games. Strand Larsen for Wolves. João Pedro going well for Brighton. Another Brighton there underneath, and another Wolves. Brian Mbemo, another one that's a forward. So similarly priced to Visser, 3.3 against 3.9. And then Amad Diallo for Manchester United, 3 million. If he keeps his place and keeps scoring at 3 million, it's not too shabby either, to be fair. Now, if we have a look at the bonus points, so these are all of the people that have been in the bonuses. Christian Romero at the top. He's been in shots, and he's been in passes, and he's been in tackles. Van Heck, passes, tier 3, same as Romero both weeks. Saliba, 1 set of passing, 2 sets of tackles. Fatawu, the max tackles in both weeks and a shot tier. Bruno G, so 1 passing bonus. He's 5 tackles and 1 shot. Stevens of Southampton. In fact, there's a trio of Southampton there. 2.4, 2.3 and 2.3. Stevens, Bednarek and Harwood Bellis. They've been in multiple passing bonus. 3 each, both weeks for all 3 of them. Casemiro, tackles and shots. Then we come to the first goalkeeper, which is Flecken. So 2.9. Oh yeah, maybe that's the way to go. No clean sheets for Flecken yet, but he has made saves bonus on both occasions. Not much more expensive than Henderson. Maybe that's where I will look for my goalkeeper. And then you've got Robinson and Morsey. They've both been in the tackles. Sangare, tackles and a shot. Neto's the next goalkeeper, so he's 2.7. We always talk about him losing his place though, so Ruben Diaz started both games for Manchester City, a 3 and a 2 for passing. Chali Riyad, he's been passing and tackles for Crystal Palace. Went off injured in their Carabao Cup this week. Flynn Downs, Southampton, passing and tackles. Mo Salah, shot tiers. Saka, shot tiers and with 1 tackle. And Gvardiol has got passing and 1 tackle. Break that down. Look at the goalkeepers. So Flecken, at the top. Neto and Hermansen with 5 out of 6. And then you've got Leno, McCarthy with 3. Raya, Sarr, Pope with 2. Edison, Sells, Martinez, Walton, Henderson, Sanchez and Pickford with 1. And Jason Steele, as we mentioned last week, the outlier with 1 passing tier. So looking at the value there, you've got McCarthy. Again, talk of Southampton buying a keeper. Hermansen, 2.6. Neto, 2.7. Flecken, 2.9. And of course, the 2.8 that's the most popular, Henderson. Food for thought there. Flecken certainly one that's on the mind. On to defenders. Romero and Van Heck, Saliba, they're the ones we've seen before. All the way down to Gvardiol were on the other sheet. Then you've got a few more there on 5. So Akanji, Collins, Van Dijk and Van der Ven. Just to be mainly passing with the odd tackles thrown in there. Robinson, 2.7, could be a player there with tackles. He's known for attacking returns as well. On to the midfielders. Bruno G at the top with 7. And then we've seen those down to the 5s. So underneath that is Eze. He's been unlucky so far on the score sheet in the Carabao Cup this week. Can he continue that form into the league? 3.9 is a nice price. Could be somebody that can look at. Maybe that's where my McAllister move could be. We shall see. A few more under there. Gravenberch. Looks like he's got the number 6 slot for Liverpool at the minute, but they're still looking for another one maybe in the transfer window. And Iwobi and Matoma, Paquetá. I mean, they've all scored and they're in these bonuses. Kevin De Bruyne, again, we know what he can do. Tier 3 passes this week was maybe a slight surprise, but if he can keep that up, you never know. And then we'll just look at the strikers. So Fatawu is the highest at all in tackles apart from 1 shot. Haaland and Salah, no surprise to see them in shots. Brennan Johnson, 3 tiers of tackle points and 1 shots. And then a few more that's on 3 shots. Son, Madueke, Solanke. Interesting to see that he went down from 45% ownership, I think, to 25%. There's rumours he's going to be out till after the international break, so a few people moved off him over the weekend. And then Chris Wood, Muniz, Cunha and Luis Diaz on 3. And a quick look at the ownerships. We'll do more of this on Friday Night Not Live this week, but not really a lot of change. Haaland still top of the shop, 84, Isak 70, Saliba 60, then a few more creeping up over 40. We've got Romero, Smith Rowe and Henderson. In the 30s, we've got Saka, Palmer, Bruno G, Salah, Eze and Rodri still hanging on. A lot of people have thought, well, for keeping him, I want him back when he's back after the international break. So they've kept him. Munoz, Gvardiol, Solanke and Rice in the 20s. And then those in the high teens are Lewis Dunk, Pedro Porro, Van Heck and Gabriel. As I say, we'll do more of that on Friday Night Not Live this week. For those using the transfer planner, I've updated this week with the latest transfers, incoming players and players that have moved clubs. If you want to get hold of the transfer planner, you can find it on our Patreon, patreon.com Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show. We've got 2 tiers on there, the basic tier, £2 a month, the Cumulus supporter, just to support the show and the game. And the intermediate tier, £3.50 a month, Stratus Navigator. That's for the transfer planner. As mentioned previously, when the transfer window ends, I'm going to update that with all of the players that come in. Then over the international break, I'm going to have a review of the whole planner to make it more user-friendly for those that use other platforms than Excel. I've had a few people that say it's not ideal on Google Sheets, so we're going to have an upgrade there to make sure it's compatible for everybody. So like I say, if you want to support the show, find us over there. Well, thanks very much for watching, everybody. If you liked what you've seen, leave a like for the video. If you want to subscribe to the channel, please do. And we'll be back for Friday night, not live, on Friday. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye for now.